6 years ago, on June 23, 2018, it was a Saturday in Thailand. A local junior football team from the Chiang Rai province, named the Wild Boars, was practicing football like they did every day. However, on that particular day, the players and the assistant coach planned an adventure. After their football practice, they decided to explore the Tham Luang cave. Accompanying them was their 25-year-old assistant coach, Wang, along with 12 boys aged between 11 to 16 years, all teenagers. Two of the players had opted out because one hadn't come on his bicycle that day, and the other had to return home early to finish his homework. So, the 12 boys and their assistant coach went ahead with the plan, and none of their parents were informed. They reached the entrance of the cave with their bicycles and bags. Outside the cave, there was a warning sign advising people not to enter from July to October because it was the monsoon season, and the cave would fill with water. Many areas of the cave would become submerged. However, it was June 23, and typically, rainfall in Chiang Rai didn't start until late July, so the coach didn't think there would be any problems. Their plan was to explore for just an hour, as it was evening, and they needed to head home before it got too late. But as they ventured deeper into the cave, the rain began pouring heavily. Since Tham Luang is located beneath a mountain range, water started flowing directly into the cave. The boys and their coach, deep inside the cave, didn't hear the outside sounds of the storm, and they had no idea how serious their situation was. As the water level rose, they realized it was too late to exit. The coach, Fun, understood that it would not be possible to leave until the water level receded. They were already deep inside the cave, and as the water kept rising, they had no choice but to go even further into the cave. Eventually, they found a high area that was 14 feet above the water level and 124 feet above the cave's lowest point. This was where they took refuge. By this time, it was late night, and the boys hadn't returned home. Their parents, worried, contacted the head coach of the football team. When he checked his phone, he found 20 missed calls, all from the parents inquiring about their children. The head coach then tried calling the assistant coach, Fun, nicknamed Yoke, but there was no answer. He then tried reaching out to the other kids, but none of their phones connected. Finally, the phone of one boy, Sangpon Wang, rang. Sangpon was also a member of the Wild Boars team. He told the head coach that the rest of the team and the assistant coach had gone to explore Tham Luang cave. Sangpon hadn't gone because he didn't have a bicycle, so he went home. That night, there was heavy rain, but the head coach managed to reach the cave's entrance. There, he found the boys' bicycles and bags and saw that the water was rising rapidly. Realizing the children were trapped inside, he called emergency services and the police. Soon, the parents of the children arrived as well. The news spread across Thailand and around the world that 13 people, including the members of the youth football team and their coach, were trapped inside Tham Luang cave. The Thai Navy SEALs team was also deployed to the cave, along with the media and ambulances. What had once been a quiet area was now bustling with people. Meanwhile, the boys and their coach were deep inside the cave, having spent the night on an elevated area. The assistant coach hoped that by morning, the water level would decrease, and they could exit, but that didn't happen. The boys had no food with them, as they had only planned to be inside for an hour. They had no provisions for the long, unforeseen wait. They hadn't brought their own coaches, but their coach was a former Navy SEAL, and he had experience in keeping people fasted for long periods. So, he taught the children meditation and instructed them to breathe in a particular way to conserve their energy until help arrived. The Navy SEALs attempted to enter the cave, but the water flow was so strong that they had to turn back after going a certain distance. Thai Navy SEALs are trained in open ocean and siege diving, but they had no experience in underground cave diving. Moreover, Tham Luang cave wasn't a small cave. After entering the cave, about 1 kilometer in, they reached the Samyak section, where the cave divides into two paths. One of those paths goes as deep as 10 kilometers. Thai authorities knew that if the 13 people were alive, they would be deep inside the cave, likely in a higher elevated area. This made the mission quite tough for the Navy SEALs because they weren't experienced cave divers, and visibility was almost non-existent due to the muddy water. Even with the lights on their helmets, they couldn't see anything clearly. So, they needed experienced cave divers to assist. Luckily, there was a British cave diver, Vernon Nuzzard, who had been contacted by authorities on June 24. He wanted to help, so 3 experienced cave divers, including John Volath and Richard Stantonbury, arrived with equipment at Tham, Luang. On June 28, a team of U.S. Air Force pararescuemen also arrived. As I mentioned earlier, the Thai Navy SEALs had attempted to enter the cave but were stopped by heavy rainfall that caused the water levels to rise and flow rapidly. This led to a temporary halt in the rescue mission. To lower the water levels, pipes were used to pump out the water, and police officers with special dogs were searching the mountains surrounding the cave to find alternative entrances. However, no new entrance was found. Once the water level decreased, the British divers, John and Richard, entered the cave, and other divers followed. They set up ropes to guide their way and ensure they could return safely and also help future divers. The goal of the divers was to reach a location inside the cave called Pattaya Beach, which was at a slightly higher elevation, increasing the chances that the trapped people were there. However, when they reached this area, they found no sign of the 13 people. After this, they decided to go further. Even though it wasn't ideal, because divers typically use only a third of their oxygen tank for the outbound journey and reserve the rest for the return trip, John and Richard had already used a lot of their air. But they decided to continue their search, knowing that there were oxygen cylinders stored in Chamber 3, a little distance from the cave entrance and at a higher elevation. The Navy SEAL team had already established rescue base there, with oxygen cylinders and backup divers. At around 10 p.m., as they moved further into the cave, John smelled human odor. The boys were meditating, so there was no sound, but when they heard someone approaching, one of the boys called out to them. John and Richard reached the location where the boys were hiding, and John even recorded a video. Now, these 13 people were found, but rescuing them safely was another challenge. While they could swim a bit, none of them were professional divers capable of completing such a long cave dive. It had taken 6 hours just for the divers to reach them from the entrance, and the return trip took 5 more hours, set an 11-hour journey. The children were located about 4 kilometers inside the cave, at a high elevation spot called Chamber 9. The cave was narrow in parts, with the narrowest section only 72 centimeters, about 2 feet, wide. While some areas were spacious, others were extremely tight, making it difficult to evacuate the children. To provide mental support, 7 Navy SEALs, including Thai Army Dr. Pak Lo Hwarshan, reached the children on July 3 and stayed with them until they were safely out. On the same day, food and fresh water were brought to the children, who had been trapped without food for 10 days. They were allowed to eat lightly to avoid any complications. The children wrote letters to their parents, apologizing and assuring them of their safety. Now, the rescue team faced 3 options. First, to teach all 13 people how to dive and bring them out. Second, to drill through the mountain above the cave to reach the children, or third, to wait until the rainy season ended in November to allow the water levels to drop. Eventually, they realized none of these options were feasible. Teaching the children to dive wasn't practical because they were physically and mentally exhausted after being trapped for 10 days without food. The weather conditions and their weakened state made diving training impossible. Drilling through the solid rock of the mountain above would take too long, and there was no guarantee they would reach the right spot. And waiting until November was not a viable option, as the rains could submerge the area where the children were trapped. The only remaining option was to dive the children out. However, even experienced divers took 6 hours to reach the children, and it would take much longer for the children, who had no diving experience. The rescuers decided to inject ketamine, an anesthetic, into the children to keep them unconscious during the journey, preventing them from panicking. Each child was fitted with a wetsuit, life jacket, full-face diving mask, and an oxygen tank. A total of 18 cave divers were selected, one for each child. The children were attached to the divers with ropes to ensure they didn't get lost due to poor visibility. For the sections of the cave filled with water, a total of 90 additional divers were stationed to refill oxygen tanks and provide further assistance as needed. The rescue operation began on July 8. 4 divers rescued 4 boys and sent them to the local hospital. After 10 hours, all the cylinders were refilled, and by July 9, 4 more children were safely brought out. On July 10, the remaining 4 children were rescued, and finally, their coach was brought out. The rescue mission was completed successfully, with all 13 people safely returned. The operation pumped out nearly 1 billion liters of water from the cave. The entire world watched this rescue, and numerous movies and documentaries have been made about it. This story teaches us that we should never lose courage, no matter how difficult the situation may be. Just like those 13 people, who fought to survive in the cave. Help will eventually come if you hold on long enough. So, if you're going through tough times, don't panic. Better days are sure to come. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video and share it with your friends.